The silence woke me before the alarm did. It wasn't the kind of silence you enjoy, the peaceful kind that tells you the world's still asleep, but the hollow, eerie kind that feels like someone hit mute on your life. I lay there for a few seconds, eyes half open, staring at the ceiling fan's slow rotation. The air felt too still, too measured. Laura wasn't in bed. Her side was untouched, the pillow smooth, the blanket folded like it hadn't been slept in. For a moment, I thought she'd gotten up early for one of her morning runs. She had that habit, to lace her shoes quietly, kiss my forehead, and disappear into the cool dawn. But something was off. No faint sound of sneakers on the porch. No scent of her lavender shampoo drifting from the bathroom. Just emptiness. I called out her name once, twice. The echo bounced back at me from the hallway. In the kitchen, the coffee pot sat cold and clean. Laura always brewed it before sunrise. She couldn't stand the smell of oil and metal that followed me from the garage unless the air was already saturated with caffeine and vanilla creamer. But now the machine was dry, the counter spotless. Too spotless. Like someone had gone through the place with surgical precision. That's when I saw it. A single folded note on the counter, written on the stationery I'd given her last Christmas. The one she said was too elegant to waste on grocery lists. My name wasn't on it, just the curve of her handwriting. Deliberate, almost fragile. I need time to rediscover myself. Please don't try to find me. Laura. No apology. No explanation. Just that. I read it 3 times, waiting for hidden meaning to reveal itself. Maybe there was a code, some inside joke, some hint that this was temporary. But it wasn't. The words blurred until they were just shapes on a page, the ink slightly smudged like she'd hesitated for half a second before signing her name. The house looked staged, like a museum exhibit titled Domestic Bliss, 2012 to 2025. Everything was arranged too neatly. Her perfume bottles stood in perfect symmetry on the dresser. Her favorite mug, the chipped one with the red tulip, was gone. But her hairbrush sat on the sink, a few strands still clinging to it, mocking me with their intimacy. I walked through each room, half expecting her to step out from behind a door, laugh, tell me she just needed air. But all I found were ghosts of routine, the faded dent on the couch where she'd curl up after dinner, the yoga mat rolled neatly in the corner, the faint smell of lavender candles. It hit me then, she'd planned this. Not in a rush of anger. Not in some late-night impulse. No, Laura had prepared to disappear. The cupboards were organized, her clothes selectively missing. The jewelry box emptied of everything sentimental, but left behind just enough to look accidental. I stood there, hands braced on the counter, trying to remember the last real conversation we'd had. Something about the spark being gone, about how routine had become our third roommate. I'd laughed it off. Told her every marriage cools down, that it didn't mean we were broken. She'd smiled a quiet, unreadable smile and said, maybe I just forgot what being alive feels like. Now I understood what she meant. I made coffee anyway, because doing nothing felt worse. The smell filled the air, clashing with her lingering scent. I sipped it standing up, watching the sunlight creep across the linoleum floor like time itself didn't care. The clock ticked louder than it should have. Each second a small reminder that she wasn't coming back. I thought of all the things I could fix in my life, engines, wiring, broken carburetors, but not this. Not the kind of problem that left no noise, no smoke, no visible crack to patch. When the coffee turned lukewarm, I wandered into the living room and sat on the couch we bought when we first moved in. The cushions still held the faint warmth of her favorite blanket. I looked around at the framed photos, her laughing, with sunlit hair at the lake, her arms around my neck the day we opened the garage, her smile too bright, too believing. I couldn't tell if I wanted to throw them away or keep them forever. Outside, Greenridge was already stirring, the sound of lawnmowers, a car door slamming, someone's dog barking down the street. Life, unapologetically ordinary. But inside this house, everything had stopped. My phone buzzed with messages from work, Trent asking if I was coming in, Paul saying a customer needed a brake job ASAP. I typed, I'll be late, and deleted it before sending. I wasn't ready to face people, not yet. Instead, I poured another cup of coffee and read the note again. The words didn't change. I need time to rediscover myself. What did that even mean? Rediscover what? Who she was before me. The woman who loved to paint at midnight, who could spend an hour staring at clouds, who swore she'd never live a small life. I'd thought she'd already found herself, with me. Maybe that was my mistake. I set the note down gently, almost afraid it might vanish if I touched it too hard. The rest of the day passed in fragments, cleaning things that didn't need cleaning, opening drawers, as if she might have left me a clue, a reason, anything. But there was nothing. When evening came, I stood in our bedroom doorway, staring at the half-empty closet. Her dresses hung like strangers, colorless, without her in them. I undressed and lay down on my side of the bed. The other side stayed cold, untouched. I didn't bother with the lamp. The dark felt honest. Before sleep finally came, one thought circled endlessly in my head, slow and heavy like a ticking clock. You can fix anything, Evan Brooks, except the moment she stopped loving you. The second morning after Laura's note, I hunted for noise. I turned on the radio, let the announcer's cheerful voice ricochet off the tile, and banged drawers open like I could scare grief out of the house. I wasn't looking for anything, spare keys, receipts, the missing lid to the pasta pot, but my hands kept moving like around an engine with a hidden fault. You touch, you listen, you wait for the rattle to confess. It was the third drawer by the sink, the one that jammed on a crooked screwdriver. I yanked too hard, and something slid forward with a soft plastic sigh. A small white bundle, neat as a dinner mint, wrapped in tissue and secured with a hair tie I recognized. I knew the weight before I opened it. Prepaid phone. Disposable honesty. The screen woke without a password. The top thread read Ryan C. Even the dot of the unread bubble looked smug. I tapped, and my world narrowed to a column of messages, casual, intimate, practiced. At first the texts were gym talk, macros, training plans, a flexing emoji under a mirror selfie. Then they warmed. Jokes about my grease-stained hands, about how I married the safe choice. He called her my light. She sent him the sunrise from our back porch and wrote, "I want mornings that feel like this." He replied, "You will. With me." Scrolling felt like pulling a thread that would unravel the whole quilt. There were hotel confirmations, weeknights, always, under names that weren't theirs. Screenshots of flights, one-day plans for a beach where they wouldn't know anyone. Voice notes I couldn't play. I stopped when I hit last winter. The first time they met at the gym, the accidental coffee after a class Laura swore she hated. I set the phone down. Lavender still hung in the air, already sour. Part of me wanted to drown the thing in the sink until all their digital heat went dark. Another part, colder, knew this was evidence. Diane Mercer would later call it material, like betrayal could be weighed. I kept reading. It wasn't a single mistake. It was architecture, small, rehearsed increments, little lies shaped into doors. There were messages about sex, taut and bright as pulled wire. Not porn, nothing explicit enough for court, but eager. "I still feel you," she wrote after a lunch break stretch. "You trembled," he wrote back. I could imagine her typing, pausing, deleting, retyping. A photo loaded. Ryan shirtless in a locker room, lighting cruel in the way men like him prefer. Abs scalloped like someone carved them with a ruler. He held the phone low for the angle, a grin that asked to be admired. I hated him for how easy it seemed, and I hated myself for checking whether Laura had sent a heart. She had. 3. My stomach turned. I thought of the night she told me she was too tired for sex, that her body felt heavy with stress. I'd kissed her forehead and said okay. I hadn't known I was surrendering ground. A receipt appeared for a boutique hotel 2 towns over. The date matched the night she claimed a yoga workshop. "Rooms smelled like oranges," she wrote. "Like you," he replied. I could hear her laugh. At the table where we planned trips we never took, I opened the photos. There were fewer than I feared. Hotel sheets, a ceiling fan, his wrist pressed to her thigh in a cab. Her face was rarely in frame. She knew the rules of being a secret. But her posture gave her away, shoulders down, mouth parted, that soft ease of someone finally exhaling. I pressed my fingers to my eyelids until stars burst. When I looked again, I noticed the way she had started to talk in captions, even in private, choosing myself, lean energy, aligned. Words Samantha used all the time. I scrolled back and found the DM that introduced them after a fundraiser. Laura's amazing, Samantha had written. Help her find her fire again. A wink emoji like a grease spot nobody wiped. So it hadn't only been desire. It had been choreography. The house felt wrong, too tidy, too scentless, too staged. I went room to room with the phone, surveying the damage. In the closet, one dress missing created a gap, so clean it felt vicious. On the vanity, the small silver ring from our first anniversary was gone, but the everyday watch remained, ticking obediently. Not an impulse. A migration. My hands hovered over the trash can. I didn't drop the phone. I placed it back in its tissue, smoothed the edges, slid it into the drawer. I would need it later. Not only for court. For me. To remember this wasn't a bad dream I could wake from into forgiveness. By noon the world had resumed its shameless normalcy. Trucks grumbled past. A kid failed a wheelie and recovered with elastic dignity. I walked to the garage because movement is simpler than stillness. Paul glanced up, saw my face, didn't ask. He handed me a ticket and a rag. Grease absolves. I lost myself in a Subaru that whined forth and slipped in second. The rhythm returned. The careful torque, the clack of sockets, the way you listen with your fingertips. Somewhere between removing the drivetrain and rebuilding the linkage, I understood what the phone had given me. Not just pain, but clarity. The opposite of hope isn't despair. It's certainty. That evening, alone at the shop, I stared at a notepad. 2 columns, feel and do. Under feel I wrote, humiliated, angry, horny, lonely, alert. Under do I wrote, eat, sleep, lift, document, breathe. It looked absurd. It also looked like a start. I locked up as the sky cooled to grape. Back on my street, porch lights clicked on like a row of verdicts. I passed my window and saw my own reflection, grease on the forearm, jaw set, eyes dry. I didn't feel strong. I felt awake. Back at the house, I didn't turn on the lights. The note was still on the counter. I placed a glass over it like I was trapping a dangerous insect, lay on the couch, and listened to the refrigerator hum. 2 truths before sleep found me. Laura left because she wanted a different story, and I was the one who would write the ending. I didn't tell anyone. Not right away. But in Greenridge, silence is just an invitation for other people to speak on your behalf. By the next morning, the news had already outrun me. I found out at the gas station when old Mrs. Porter leaned out of her sedan window, her face arranged into that sympathetic tilt small-town women practice in church. Such a shame, she said, handing me a crumpled receipt for her lottery ticket. Saw Laura leaving before dawn yesterday, suitcases and all. Must be hard, dear. Hard. The word landed like grit between my teeth. I nodded, muttered something polite, and escaped before she could offer a pie or a prayer. At the garage, the air smelled of oil and gossip. Paul kept his eyes on the carburetor he was cleaning. Trent fiddled with the radio, turning the dial through static. Finally, Paul sighed. Heard she ran off with that gym guy. I laughed, sharp and empty. Guess even the treadmill has better conversation than me. The sound of my own voice surprised me, too calm, too dry. They both looked relieved that I'd said something. Like acknowledging a car wreck makes it less gruesome. Work became noise therapy. The clang of metal, the hiss of air compressors, the rhythm of sockets snapping into place. It was the only music I could stand. Still, every time a woman's voice drifted through the open bay door, my heart jumped. I kept expecting to see her shadow there, arms folded, ready with that half smile she used to use when she caught me working too late. But she didn't come. At lunch, I sat in the corner of Benny's diner with a sandwich that tasted like cardboard. People glanced up when I walked in, then quickly down at their plates. News traveled faster here than oil on water. A couple in the next booth whispered, "That's him," and I knew they weren't talking about my work with engines. Outside, the air carried spring heat and pity. That evening, I drove aimlessly until I ended up in front of Iron House Fitness, the boxing studio on Main. The sign flickered, half the bulbs out. Inside, Cliff, the owner, was taping his wrists. He was built like a refrigerator and moved like a man who'd made peace with pain. "Need something fixed?" he asked without looking up. "Yeah," I said. "Me." He smirked and tossed me a pair of gloves. "You can't punch heartbreak," he said, "but you can tire it out." The gloves smelled like leather and sweat, human, raw, honest. Cliff showed me how to keep my stance, how not to lead with emotion. "If you throw from anger, you miss," he said. "You swing from the hips, not the hurt." I started slow. Jab, cross, breathe. The bag swayed like it was mocking me. I hit harder. The sound filled the room, thud, exhale, thud, until my arms burned and the ache in my chest shifted somewhere lower, somewhere bearable. When I finally stopped, my hands were shaking, sweat running into my eyes. Cliff clapped a towel against my shoulder. "Looks like you found your rhythm," he said. "Yeah," I panted. "Just needed something that hits back slower than life." He laughed, a deep gravel sound. "Come by anytime, Brooks. The bag doesn't judge." Driving home, the night felt lighter. My muscles hummed, not from rage but release. Streetlights cut long shadows across the road, and for the first time in days, I realized I hadn't thought about the note. Back at the house, I stripped off my shirt and stood under the shower until the water ran cold. My body felt different, tighter, awake. I thought about how Laura used to run her hands along my shoulders, saying she liked how strong I looked when I worked. The memory sparked somewhere between anger and desire. The body remembers warmth even when the heart rejects it. I poured a whiskey, sat on the porch, and listened to crickets rasp in the grass. My phone buzzed with messages I didn't answer. Somewhere downtown, a train groaned across the tracks. I imagined Laura hearing that same sound from some motel room or apartment far away, pretending it didn't remind her of home. Greenridge wasn't cruel, not exactly. It was just small enough to magnify everything. Tomorrow, people would move on to someone else's scandal. But tonight, my story was the only one worth whispering about. I finished my drink, set the glass down carefully, and looked at my hands. They were nicked, calloused, trembling just a little. Cliff was right, you can't punch heartbreak. But you can learn its rhythm. And once you do, it loses some of its power. The lavender scent in the house was fading. I left the door open a while longer, letting the night air chase it out. I hadn't slept more than a few hours in days. The bed felt too wide, too silent. I'd started leaving the TV on, not to watch, but to fill the space where her breathing used to be. That morning, I woke before dawn again, half from habit, half from dread, and sat at the kitchen table with a mug of black coffee that went cold before I drank it. There was a moment, right before the first light touched the blinds, when I thought about deleting every trace of her. The photos, the messages, the note. Just wipe it all clean, like stripping a corroded engine back to bare metal. But then curiosity crept in, an itch I couldn't ignore. If she had a new life, I wanted to see the lies she told to build it. I opened Instagram. Laura's profile had changed. The same handle, but now her name was followed by a new tagline, "Becoming my best self, one sunrise at a time." It felt like someone else had written it, someone polished and untouchable. The profile photo showed her standing on a cliff at sunset, wind in her hair, eyes closed like she was listening to the universe. Her feed was a perfect lie. There she was in yoga poses she'd never once done at home, arms stretched toward the sky, like freedom itself. There were green smoothies, beach selfies, and motivational quotes about embracing change and letting go of what no longer serves you. And then there was Ryan. He appeared in the background at first, blurred behind her on a hiking trail, reflected in a cafe window. But by the fourth photo, he wasn't hiding anymore. His hand rested casually on her waist, both of them glowing in that curated sunlight influencers seem to carry in their pockets. His caption read, "Grateful for new beginnings." The comments were full of praise. People from town, mutual acquaintances, old co-workers, wrote things like, "You look radiant," and "Proud of you for choosing happiness." Every word felt like a paper cut. But one name stood out. Samantha Vale. Her best friend, the one who'd sat across from me at countless dinners, who'd smirked when Laura teased me for working late, who'd once said, "Evan, you're too steady. It's almost dangerous." Samantha had a way of smiling while measuring people. I used to think she was just bored. Now I knew better. Samantha's comments were little fires. "So proud of your courage. Freedom looks good on you. Keep shining, girl." I scrolled further and found a picture of the two of them at some seaside cafe. Heads tilted together like a campaign for liberation. Samantha was the architect, Laura the exhibit. The more I looked, the clearer it became. Laura hadn't just walked away. She'd been guided, coaxed, almost handled. The tone of her captions matched Samantha's old posts word for word. That same blend of empowerment and subtle disdain for anyone who didn't evolve with you. My stomach twisted. Samantha's own husband had left her last year for a younger woman, and she'd spent months posting about starting over and reclaiming power. I remember the dinner when she told Laura half-jokingly, "Maybe it's your turn to see what's out there." Maybe it hadn't been a joke. I clicked through the tag photos. There was one of Laura and Ryan at a gym event, both sweaty and smiling, her arm looped through his. My first instinct was rage, the raw, stupid kind that burns too hot to hold. But underneath that came something else, understanding. Betrayal wasn't just born out of lust. Sometimes it grew from someone else's loneliness. I set the phone down and stared at the wall. The lavender scent had faded completely now, replaced by oil and dust. The house was losing her, one molecule at a time. I should have closed the app, but I couldn't. I opened Ryan's page. His posts were predictable: protein shakes, workout clips, motivational reels about discipline and energy alignment. But buried between them was a story highlight called She. I tapped it. A slow-motion video of Laura laughing, wind blowing her hair across her face. Then a caption, "The one who reminds me what purpose feels like." I wanted to throw the phone. Instead, I locked the screen and set it down carefully, like it might explode if I moved too fast. For a long moment, I sat there in the dark kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. I thought about how we'd once taken a photo just like that. Her laughing, me pretending to hate the camera. That photo used to hang on the fridge, but it was gone now. She must have taken it with her. I leaned back, running my hands through my hair. Every muscle in my body felt tight. Not just from anger, but from memory. The kind that sits under your skin and won't leave. The thing about seeing someone's new life is that it doesn't just hurt, it tempts you. Part of me wanted to message her, to ask if she missed me, if she thought of our nights together, the ones full of quiet touches and half-whispered laughter. But another part of me knew it wouldn't matter. People don't miss what they've already rewritten. I stood up, poured the cold coffee down the sink, and stared at my reflection in the window. She was building a lie, perfectly filtered and liked by hundreds. I was living the truth, messy, unposted, real. By the time the sun finally broke through the blinds, I'd made a decision. If Laura wanted a new story, I'd let her have it. But I wouldn't be the villain she made me out to be. I'd find out who really pulled the strings, and I'd make sure the truth saw daylight, even if it burned. Greenridge had a way of pretending nothing ever happened. The days moved on as if scandal were just weather, unpleasant, temporary, quickly replaced by something else. But beneath that small-town calm, the rot lingered. Everyone still looked twice when I walked by. Conversations dipped the moment I stepped into a room. And in that quiet scrutiny, I found something dangerous growing inside me. Focus. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns too fast. What I had now was slower, colder, the kind of clarity that makes you see patterns instead of pain. I started with Samantha Vale. She'd always been around. In our photos, our dinners, our double dates that felt more like competitions. I used to think her compliments were harmless, her little digs at me part of her charm. But once you know betrayal, you start hearing its echoes in every word that came before it. Samantha's marriage had fallen apart last summer. Her husband, a sales rep named Greg, left her for a 24-year-old coworker. She called it her awakening. She started dressing younger, talking louder, posting endless mantras about self-love and female energy. I'd muted her account months ago, Laura hadn't. Now, reading back through Laura's messages, I could see Samantha's fingerprints all over the rhetoric. You deserve more. He's comfortable, not passionate. Don't live small, because he does. Every quote Laura had started using, every line that appeared in her captions, had come from Samantha first. It wasn't just influence. It was indoctrination. The deeper I dug, the clearer the pattern became. Samantha's new world revolved around healing retreats and transformational weekends, usually hosted at some overpriced coastal lodge. I found photos of one from February, the same weekend Laura told me she was visiting her sister. In the group photo, Laura stood next to Samantha, eyes closed, palms turned upward like she was surrendering her old life to the wind. Maybe that's when she decided. Maybe that's when Samantha decided for her. I couldn't shake the image of Laura sitting there, vulnerable and open, while Samantha whispered poison disguised as empowerment. She'd made Laura believe comfort was a cage, that I was the lock. One night, unable to sleep, I went through my own phone, texts between Laura and me from before it all fell apart. I read the way she'd once talked, warm, teasing, full of inside jokes. Then, around last winter, her tone shifted. Shorter sentences, colder punctuation. The word "we" started disappearing, replaced by I. I need to grow. I feel stuck. I think I'm changing. And then finally, I don't know who I am anymore. Those weren't her words. Those were Samantha's. The next morning, I took a drive out to the Vale house, not to confront her, not yet, but to remind myself she was real. The kind of real that could be held accountable. The place looked exactly as I remembered it. Glass wine bottles on the porch, a half-dead fern hanging from a hook, her car gleaming in the driveway like vanity itself. She came out while I was parked across the street. Tight leggings, oversized sweater, hair pulled into a ponytail that tried too hard to look effortless. She was talking on her phone, laughing, that high, hollow sound that doesn't reach the eyes. I watched her for less than a minute, long enough to see her expression change when she spotted me. She froze, then turned back inside, without a word. Good. Let her wonder. Later that night, I went to Cliff's gym again. I didn't tell him what I'd found, but I think he sensed it. He watched me hit the bag until my knuckles went red, then said, "You can't keep carrying her, man. Even in hate. It's still weight." "I'm not carrying her," I said. "I'm studying her." He raised an eyebrow. "That sounds worse." Maybe it was. But I needed to know who was really steering the ship that wrecked my life. Back home, I sat in the dim light of the kitchen and opened my laptop. I made a folder on the desktop and named it Blueprints. Inside it, I saved screenshots, texts, posts, photos, timestamps. Not to blackmail, not yet, but to understand. To see the pattern that led from friendship to manipulation to betrayal. The truth was there, piece by piece. Samantha had been the push behind it all, the spark that lit the fuse. She'd wanted company in her misery, someone else to validate her story about freedom and rebirth. Laura had been her project, her redemption through corruption. By midnight, the folder was full. I stared at it until my eyes blurred, then leaned back in my chair and closed them. I thought about the first time Samantha had ever met Laura. We were hosting a barbecue, and she'd arrived in a white sundress, smiling too wide. I remember her hugging Laura for the first time and saying, "You're even more beautiful than he said." I never did figure out who he was. Maybe it was just a line. Maybe not. Now, as the clock hit 2 a.m., I realized something. I didn't need to destroy them. I just needed to show everyone what they really were. People always reveal themselves. I just had to give them the right mirror. The anger finally settled, turning into something else, resolve. The kind of resolve you feel when a broken thing stops trying to fix itself and starts planning instead. I shut the laptop, stood up, and walked to the window. The town slept beneath a thin fog, streetlights glowing like faint promises. She thought she'd escaped me. Samantha thought she'd rewritten the story. They'd both forgotten one thing. I'm a mechanic. I know how to take things apart, and how to rebuild them so everyone can see exactly what broke. By Thursday, the air in Greenridge felt different. Not lighter, not heavier, just aware. The town's attention had shifted somewhere else, and that gave me room to move. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I was ready to see, to look them both in the eye, to remind myself that they were real people, not ghosts behind a screen. Core Peak Fitness sat at the edge of town, all glass and gloss, built for people who liked their reflection as much as their workouts. I parked across the street, the engine idling, watching through the wide front windows as bodies moved in rhythm to synthetic music. Laura had dragged me there once last winter to try something new together. I'd lasted half an hour before I fled to the diner across the road for pancakes and peace. Now she wasn't there, but he was. Ryan Cordero. Up close, he looked exactly like the man from the photos, tan, sleeveless, every vein on his arms popping like he'd sculpted them just to be admired. His laugh was the kind you hear before you see him. Loud, rehearsed, made to carry. He was training a woman, adjusting her posture, his hands resting on her shoulders with the same casual familiarity he'd once used on my wife. The woman giggled. I watched his hand linger a second too long. My jaw tightened. I wasn't jealous, not anymore. It was something colder, more analytical. Like watching a thief try the same trick on someone new. When he walked outside, wiping sweat from his face with a towel, I stepped out of my truck. "Ryan," I called. He turned, surprised. For a second, his brain shuffled through faces. Then he placed me. Evan Brooks. The name left his mouth slow, like a word he'd rather not say. "That's right," I said. "Laura's husband." I let that word hang there. He gave a small, careful smile, the kind you use with cops or customers. "Ex-husband, right?" Something like that. I took a step closer. "I just wanted to thank you." He blinked. "For what?" "For showing me who she really is." The confusion flickered behind his eyes, then settled into arrogance. "Look, man, I didn't mean for any of that to happen." "Oh, you did," I interrupted. "You just didn't mean for it to get messy. There's a difference." He looked around, like hoping someone would step outside, give him an audience. No one did. "You don't have to do this," he said finally. "I know." I pulled my phone from my pocket. "But I think I'll take a photo anyway." He frowned. "What for?" "New beginnings deserve an audience." I lifted the phone before he could react, snapped the shot, him holding a protein shake, looking both smug and stupid under the afternoon light. He raised a hand like he wanted to stop me, then thought better of it. The moment froze in his hesitation. Back in the truck, my hands were steady. I still had Laura's Instagram password. She'd used the same one for years, something sentimental, our wedding date. I opened the app, uploaded Ryan's photo to her account, and typed a caption that almost made me laugh aloud. "New beginnings deserve an audience." Then I hit post. For the next few minutes, I just watched. The likes started slow, then faster. Comments flooded in. "What's this?" "Wait, who's this guy?" "Laura, are you okay?" By the 10th minute, the image had already spread. Screenshots shared in group chats, gossip resurrected in real time. The digital lie she'd built was cracking, one pixel at a time. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel guilty either. Just balanced. That evening, I went to the garage. The guys had already heard. Trent tried not to grin. "Man, you really stirred the pot." Paul shook his head. "You sure that was smart?" I tightened a bolt on a carburetor and said, "I didn't lie. I just told the truth louder." Paul laughed under his breath. "Fair enough." Work bled into night. The rhythm of the shop calmed me, the hiss of air, the metallic clink, the pulse of the old radio in the corner. Out there, chaos was trending. In here, order was something you could hold. When I finally got home, I checked her page again. The post was gone, deleted after 2 hours. But the damage was done. Dozens of people had seen it, commented, shared. Her followers had turned quiet, that eerie silence that means people are talking somewhere else. A message blinked in my inbox. From Laura. "Laura, why are you doing this?" Me. "Just evening the score." "Laura, you're humiliating me." Me. "You already did that." "I'm just giving the truth some daylight." She didn't reply. I stared at her name on the screen. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, but I stopped. Nothing I could say would sting more than what she was already reading about herself. Outside, thunder rumbled somewhere distant, a summer storm creeping over the hills. I opened the back door and let the air in. The smell of rain mixed with engine oil and something else. Freedom, maybe. For the first time in weeks, I felt tired, not hollow. My pulse slowed. My chest loosened. They thought they'd broken me, but all they'd done was sharpen me. I finished the night with a beer on the porch, watching the rain blur the streetlights. Somewhere out there, Laura was refreshing her phone, trying to control a narrative that no longer belonged to her. Somewhere, Ryan was wondering how a quiet mechanic had just made his life very loud. I smiled to myself and whispered, "Your turn to feel small." The storm passed overnight, leaving the morning air heavy and clean. The streets shone like glass, every puddle a mirror that caught the sun. Green Ridge looked scrubbed new, a small mercy, considering what was about to happen. I'd spent half the night on the phone with Diane Mercer. She was the kind of lawyer who didn't waste sympathy. Her voice was brisk, deliberate, each word sharp as the tip of a pen. "You don't win with emotion," she said. "You win with evidence. You already have plenty of that." I liked her immediately. Her office sat above a florist downtown, and when I walked in, the place smelled of roses and paper. She wore black like armor, her nails short and clean, and her desk looked like it could double as a judge's bench. "I saw the post," she said, without looking up from the folder she was reading. "Bold move. Did it help?" She smiled faintly. "Depends what you wanted." You made her scramble. "That's good. But now we play smarter." She slid a document across the desk, divorce petition, initial filing. My name already printed. Her tone never softened as she explained the process. Joint assets, spousal conduct, timeline of separation. It was all math to her. Math and leverage. "Laura will come back," Diane said. "Eventually. To collect her things, to negotiate. Maybe to apologize if she thinks it'll get her sympathy. That's your moment." "For what?" "To show her who she really is legally, financially, and publicly." I raised an eyebrow. "That sounds theatrical." "Everything about this already is." We spent hours preparing. Diane took notes while I described the phone I'd found, the messages, the affair, the influence. She arranged the evidence in clean, chronological order, each item labeled and dated. It looked less like heartbreak and more like a case study. When she finished, she leaned back and said, "You've already done most of my work for me. You just need to keep your composure. Let her talk." People like Laura always rehearse their stories. They crumble when you don't play your part. I left her office with a plan. A cold, careful plan. Laura would come soon. She had no choice. She'd left too many things behind. Too much history tied up in the house she abandoned. When she did, I'd be ready. Back at the garage, I pulled Paul and Trent aside. "I need a favor," I said. They didn't ask for details. They'd seen the exhaustion behind my eyes, the quiet fury that had replaced grief. "Tomorrow night," I continued, "I'll be here after hours. Laura's coming to pick up her stuff. I need witnesses. Just stay nearby, act normal. Pretend we're finishing a late job." Trent nodded immediately. "You got it." Paul hesitated, then said, "You're not planning anything stupid, right?" "Not stupid," I said. "Just necessary." That evening, I set everything up. The locks had already been changed, Diane's advice. I installed a small recorder on the shelf, perfectly legal, clearly visible, but easy to overlook. The kind that would pick up every word in the room. The house looked different now. Clean, sparse, stripped of softness. The smell of her lavender was long gone, replaced by coffee and oil. I wanted her to walk in and see what she'd left behind. Not a man broken, but one rebuilt. By morning, she texted, "Laura, I need to come by for my things. Tomorrow afternoon. I'll bring Samantha to help pack." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Of course, she'd bring Samantha. Her shield, her audience, her accomplice. Perfect. Me, that's fine. I'll be home after 4. I didn't add anything else. No emotion, no punctuation. Just the flat tone of a man she could no longer read. That night, Cliff asked me at the gym, "You sure about this?" "I'm sure." He nodded, wrapping his hands. "Just remember, revenge only works if you can walk away after." I don't want revenge, I said. I want truth. He smirked. Truth is just revenge with better PR. I smiled despite myself. When the next day came, I spent the morning tuning an old pickup, more for the noise than the money. By the time 4 o'clock hit, the house was ready. The table cleared. The papers signed. The recorder glowing faintly red. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't angry. I felt precise, like a man about to perform surgery. Diane called just before they arrived. Remember, she said, stay calm. Let them talk. You don't need to win the argument. You just need them to expose it. Outside, tires crunched on the gravel. 2 car doors slammed. Voices. Samantha's laughter came first, the high, deliberate sound of someone walking into a stage they built themselves. Then Laura's quieter tone, cautious, unsure. I took one deep breath, then opened the door. There they were, Samantha in oversized sunglasses, Laura behind her carrying a box, looking smaller than I remembered. Evan, she said softly. Thank you for letting me come by. Her voice trembled at the edges. I stepped aside, silent, and gestured toward the living room. Samantha brushed past me first, perfume thick enough to sting. This won't take long, she said, all professional politeness. Laura just needs closure. Closure. The word tasted like acid. They started moving around the room, boxing up pieces of a life she'd already abandoned, picture frames, a blanket, the coffee mugs we bought in Asheville. Laura's hands shook when she touched certain things. Mine didn't. Evan, she said finally, turning toward me. I know you're angry, but I didn't mean for things to happen this way. Samantha jumped in before I could answer. She's finding herself. Sometimes people grow in different directions. That was when I reached over to the counter and pressed play on my phone. The sound filled the room, Samantha's voice sharp and unmistakable, from a voicemail I'd recovered the week before. Laura, you've wasted enough time with that garage rat. You need to leave him. Trust me, he'll survive. Men like that always do. Silence. Samantha froze, eyes wide. Laura went pale, her mouth parting in disbelief. I didn't, Samantha started, then stopped. Laura's box slipped from her hands. You told me you were just helping, she whispered. I stepped forward, calm as a mechanic tightening a final bolt. You didn't just ruin a marriage, I said. You ruined your own reflection. Neither of them spoke. Samantha turned first, muttering something about misunderstanding, about context. Laura's eyes filled, but she said nothing. They both left in silence, the sound of the door closing behind them sharper than any slap. The recorder blinked once, steady, sure. Evidence, Diane would call it. To me, it sounded like freedom. The house was silent long after they left. Not the tense kind of silence that follows an argument, but the clean kind, the sound of something finished. The door had barely clicked shut before the weight in my chest shifted, as if every word I hadn't said finally fell out of me. I didn't chase after them. I didn't need to. The truth was already loose, and the town would do the rest. Greenridge devoured scandal like oxygen. It just needed someone to light the match. That night, I called Diane. She came, she asked. She brought her puppet master. Good, Diane said. And I pressed play. There was a pause, and then a small sound, a laugh, quick and proud. Perfect. You didn't raise your voice, did you? No. Then you already won. She told me she'd file the final petition in the morning. From there, it would unravel by itself. Assets, statements, signatures. Clean, official. The kind of justice that doesn't stain your hands. When I hung up, I walked through the house. The air smelled of rain and cardboard, traces of their perfume still lingering near the door. Laura's box sat forgotten in the corner, half-filled, framed photos, a folded sweater, the mug she used for her green tea. I almost laughed. After all that drama, she'd still left something behind. I poured myself a drink and carried it to the porch. The rain had started again, soft this time, a steady rhythm against the railing. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the valley like a warning that had come too late. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt calm. Maybe that was the real revenge. Not anger, not destruction, just indifference. By morning, Greenridge was buzzing again. The clerk at the gas station smiled too politely. At the diner, whispers fluttered like moths every time I walked in. "Did you hear? She recorded her own friend." No, he did. Played it right in front of them. The stories grew taller by the hour. Some said I'd screamed. Others said I'd thrown them out. The truth was simpler and far sharper. I hadn't raised my voice once. I'd just opened the curtain. At the garage, Paul greeted me with a grin. "You're trending," he said. "Wonderful." Trent added, "Heard Samantha skipped her yoga class. Word is she and Laura aren't speaking." "Good," I said. "They finally agree on something." Work came easy that day. My hands knew what to do, even when my mind wandered. Fixing engines felt different now, less like distraction, more like meditation. You turn the wrench, listen to the click, feel the thread catch, and hold. Order, restored by muscle memory. By evening, my phone was full of messages I didn't open, mutual friends pretending concern, people fishing for details. Only one caught my eye. "Laura, I hope you're proud of yourself." I read it twice, then replied, "Me no. I'm just done pretending." No more words followed. That night I saw Samantha again, not in person, but on her social media. Her page, once flooded with confidence quotes, had gone quiet. The last post was 2 days old, a blurry sunset and the caption, "Sometimes silence is self-care." I almost pitied her. Almost. Laura's page was worse. The comments under her last photo had turned sour. "Guess freedom comes with conditions." Not so brave now, huh? The image of her smile, so carefully posed, so rehearsed, had become a monument to hypocrisy. I didn't take pleasure in it. Not exactly. But I won't lie, I watched it unfold like whether I'd predicted. When the official papers came in a week later, I drove to Diane's office again. She flipped through the documents with the precision of someone dissecting a problem already solved. "She's not contesting anything," Diane said. "No claims, no appeals. Just wants it over." "Good. She loses her half of the house, you keep the garage, and you walk away clean. I wish all clients were this easy." I smiled faintly. "You should see my oil filters." She chuckled, then handed me a pen. "Sign here." The ink dried quick. Just like that, 12 years of marriage became a set of initials on a page. When I got home, I burned the last of the lavender candles she'd left behind. The scent rose for a moment, sweet, familiar, and then turned to smoke. I watched it twist into nothing, and for the first time since she'd left, the air felt like mine again. Later, Cliff stopped by the shop. He'd heard enough through the grapevine to piece together the story. "So," he said, leaning on the doorway, "you finally exorcised your ghosts?" "Not ghosts," I said. "Just lies." He grinned. "Same thing most days." We sparred for a while, and when I left the gym, sweat dripping into my eyes, I realized how light my body felt. Like something had been unhooked from inside me. Driving home, the sky turned deep orange, the town small and harmless beneath it. I passed Core Peak Fitness, its light still on, Ryan's Tesla parked out front. For a second, I slowed, watching him through the window as he trained another client. Same charm, same performance. Let him keep his stage. I parked at the curb and sat there, engine idling, the low rumble steady beneath my hands. There was nothing left to fix. Not her. Not us. Not me. By the time I got home, night had settled. I stood on the porch, listening to the hum of the world, and whispered to no one. "You were right, Laura. You did need to rediscover yourself. You just never expected I'd do the same." The wind carried her name away, scattering it across the quiet street. I let it go. Tomorrow, the world would wake up with new gossip. Greenridge always did. But tonight belonged to me, clean, quiet, unclaimed. The reckoning was over. 2 months passed like the world was holding its breath and finally let it go. Spring had burned into summer, and Greenridge moved on to new stories. Someone's kid getting engaged, a teacher caught drinking on school grounds, the mayor's dog winning a blue ribbon. My scandal had been filed away into local legend, a cautionary tale whispered over beers and beauty appointments. I didn't mind. Silence suits me better than sympathy. The divorce papers came through clean, exactly as Diane promised. I signed the final set in her office, and when she handed me the stamped copy, it felt less like an ending and more like closing a hood after a long repair. Everything tightened, sealed, and ready to run. Laura didn't fight for anything. Not the house, not the car, not the furniture we'd picked out together. She just walked away, leaving behind half her wardrobe, a few books, and the framed photo from our wedding that I found buried in the back of a closet. Her eyes in that picture still looked alive, unaware of how fragile love really was. I didn't keep it. Instead, I boxed up what was left of her things and dropped them off at a local charity. Watching the volunteers carry those boxes away felt like shedding an old skin. Greenridge had its own way of showing support. Customers who barely said 2 words before started chatting at the garage again. Mrs. Porter brought me a pie with a note that said, "For the one who stayed." Even the sheriff, who usually avoided small talk, nodded when he came in for an oil change. I wasn't the betrayed husband anymore. I was the man who'd handled it like a gentleman. Funny how the absence of rage impresses people more than dignity ever does. Business picked up, too. Brooks' garage had never been busier. Maybe people liked the story of the man who didn't break, who turned heartbreak into horsepower. I hired an extra hand to help with the load, a quiet kid named Benny who worked fast and asked no questions. Most evenings, I still went to Iron House Fitness. Cliff said I was hitting harder, moving cleaner. "You're getting dangerous," he joked once, tossing me a towel. "Not dangerous," I said. "Just done being slow." He grinned. Same thing. Some nights after training, I'd drive past the old haunts, places Laura and I used to go. The lake where we picnicked the summer before we married. The coffee shop that still used her favorite playlist. They didn't sting anymore. They were just coordinates on a map I didn't need to visit again. News of Laura trickled in the way gossip always does, fragmented, inconsistent, half pity, half judgment. Someone said she lost her job at the PR agency after the social media incident. Someone else said she moved 2 towns over, working freelance and teaching yoga classes. Ryan, apparently, had moved on to another client. That didn't surprise me. Men like him thrive on novelty. Samantha vanished entirely. Word was she'd gone to Nevada, a fresh start, according to her farewell post full of desert sunsets and vague apologies. I didn't even read the comments. It was strange, the peace that followed their absence. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. One evening, Paul and Trent invited me out for beers. We sat on the patio behind Murphy's bar, the night warm and soft, the air thick with cicadas. Trent raised his glass. To surviving a storm. Paul added, and to not killing anyone in the process. I smiled. You make it sound like a miracle. It kinda is, Trent said. Most guys would have gone nuclear. Most guys don't know what comes after the explosion, I said. We laughed easy and honest, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself, stripped down, rebuilt, functional again. Later, after they left, I stayed behind with another drink and let the hum of the small town sink into me. Across the street, a couple walked hand in hand, arguing playfully about nothing. I watched them and realized I didn't envy them. I just hoped they knew what they had, and how easily it could vanish. When I got home, the garage light was still on. I stood in the doorway, breathing in the smell of oil, metal, and rain-soaked dust. My tools hung in perfect order, every wrench in its place. Stability, predictability, the one thing that had never betrayed me. On the workbench sat an unopened letter. No return address, just my name written in Laura's handwriting. I turned it over a few times before opening it. Inside was a single page. Evan, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to read this. I just wanted to say thank you for not destroying me when you could have. I know you hate me. You have every reason to. But I think part of you understands why I left. I wanted to feel something new, and I thought I had to burn everything to find it. I was wrong. You were the only honest part of me. I hope you build something better. You always could. Laura. I folded the letter and set it aside without anger. I didn't feel warmth either. Just finality. She was right about one thing. I was building something better. Not for her. For me. I locked up the garage, turned off the light, and stood outside under the quiet stars. The air smelled of summer grass and hot metal. For the first time in months, I didn't think about the past or the people who broke it. I just breathed. What was left behind wasn't pain, it was space. The kind you could finally move in. The following spring, Greenridge bloomed early. The air was thick with the scent of cut grass and gasoline, the kind of weather that makes old engines start easier and old wounds ache less. By then, my life had settled into something simple. Work, gym, sleep. I'd traded noise for rhythm, pain for motion. One morning, while I was tuning a truck, Paul leaned through the garage door, waving a flyer. "Town reunion next weekend," he said. "You coming this year, or are you still pretending you hate people?" I laughed. "I don't hate people. I just prefer machinery. It lies less." "Come on," he said. "You've earned a drink and a few nods from folks who used to gossip about you." He wasn't wrong. I'd spent the past year rebuilding more than cars. Maybe it was time to step back into the crowd, not as the man who'd been betrayed, but as someone whole again. The reunion was held at the Greenridge Fairgrounds, same as always. Rows of tents lined with barbecue smoke, kids running between tables, the old band playing soft rock on a wobbly stage. People nodded when they saw me. Some clapped my shoulder. Others offered tight smiles, full of things unsaid. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't anything. And then I saw her, Laura. She was standing near the lemonade stand, thinner than I remembered, her hair shorter, her clothes simpler. No jewelry, no forced glow, just a quiet woman holding a paper cup and pretending not to notice the way people looked at her. For a moment, time folded. All the memories, the late-night talks, the morning coffees, the laughter, flashed and vanished again, leaving only two strangers who'd once shared a life. She saw me before I could decide whether to walk away. Her eyes widened, not in guilt, but in something like recognition. She took a hesitant step forward. "Evan." Her voice was soft, cautious. "Laura." We stood there in the middle of the crowd, the noise of the fair swirling around us. "You look good," she said, almost a whisper. "Thanks. You too." An awkward pause settled between us. Then she said, "I heard the garage is doing well." "It is," I said. "Busy enough to keep me out of trouble." She smiled faintly. "I'm glad." There were a dozen things I could have said, questions, accusations, confessions, but none of them mattered. The story was already finished. What was left was just debris. "Take care of yourself, Laura," I said finally. She nodded, eyes glistening. "You too, Evan." And then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the noise of laughter and country music. I didn't follow. I didn't even watch her go. Instead, I walked toward the edge of the field, where the lights faded and the evening air cooled. I didn't notice the woman until she spoke. "Looks like you just faced a ghost," she said. I turned. She was sitting on the low fence, sketchbook in hand, legs crossed casually, brown hair tied back, streaks of graphite on her fingers. Her smile was easy, unforced. "Something like that," I said. She tilted her head. "You okay?" "Better than I should be." She grinned. "That's a good start." Her name was Natalie, a graphic designer who'd moved to town a few months earlier, working remotely for some firm in Chicago. She'd been watching the fair, sketching people. Said she liked catching small moments before they disappeared. We talked for an hour. About nothing and everything, work, art, cars, how Greenridge felt like a place both too small and too safe. She laughed when I told her my idea of a good time was rebuilding an engine in silence. "Sounds meditative," she said. "It is," I replied. "It's also cleaner than relationships." She laughed again, the kind of laugh that doesn't echo, it stays near you. When the fireworks started, she turned her sketchbook toward me. On the page was a quick pencil drawing. Just me, standing near the fence, head turned toward the lights. Somehow she'd caught the stillness in my posture, the calm I didn't know I was showing. "It's not perfect," she said, "but it's honest." I looked at the sketch, then at her. That's all I want anymore. We watched the fireworks together, the bursts painting her face in soft gold and red. She wasn't Laura. She wasn't a distraction either. She was just there, real, grounded, human. When the crowd began to thin, she stood and stretched. "Walk me to my car?" "Sure." We walked slowly through the fairgrounds, past the smell of charcoal and sugar, past the echoes of laughter fading into the night. At her car, she turned, smiling. "I'm glad we met." "Me too." She hesitated, then said, "Maybe I'll drop by the garage sometime. My car makes this weird noise when it rains." "I'll check it out," I said. "First inspection's free." She raised an eyebrow. "Smooth." "Honest," I corrected. She laughed again, waved, and drove off, her taillights fading down the dirt road. I stood there a while longer, the night settling around me. Somewhere behind me, the band played their last song, a slow, tired tune about coming home. I walked back to my truck, the grass crunching under my boots. Before getting in, I looked up at the sky. The fireworks smoke still hung there, drifting, breaking apart. It struck me then how everything had come full circle. Laura had left to find herself. I'd stayed and done the same, without lies, without filters, without needing anyone else's story to make mine whole. For the first time in a long while, I felt something close to peace. I turned the key, the engine humming steady beneath my hand, and whispered, "Here's to new beginnings, quiet ones." Then I drove into the night, the town shrinking behind me, the road ahead wide open and waiting.